That's me, Stephen Alton Brown. That's a link to my website below where you can read the entire first chapter for free. All of my books are rated G. Welcome to Stealing Renoir, a mystery thriller where art, crime, and history converge. A woman can have it all, and it's faster to steal it. Elizabeth Monaghan is an internationally respected art appraiser, television personality, and a thief at heart. Masterpiece art stolen during World War II is her specialty. Coming this fall, the second installment in the series, Stealing Picasso. This Renoir is entitled Madeline Leaning on Her Elbow with Flowers in Her Hair, stolen in 2011. Still missing, and part of the inspiration for Stealing Renoir. Here is a related excerpt from the novel. Elizabeth Monaghan sat in her custom-made viewing chair and stared at Renoir's Madeline leaning on her elbow with flowers in her hair, stolen from the Houston couple who had hired her to do the appraisal. Elizabeth loved the risk of owning a stolen masterpiece, craved the connection to a timeless work of art touched by the masters. The dopamine rush from owning an original canvas was simply a bonus, a reminder of her personal link to immortality. Her gaze traveled to the ultimate Renoir, an impressionist canvas so few people had seen that it was almost unknown. Portrait of Señorita Santangel. Now it was hers, and no investigator like Ben Abrams was going to take it away from her. Here's another clue from Stealing Renoir. Modern technology endangers Elizabeth Monaghan and just might get her caught. Notice the discoloration? That's the original picture and a big clue for helping you solve the mystery in Stealing Renoir. Here's a Renoir entitled Jeanne Samouraï in a low-necked dress. She was one of Renoir's favorite models. Ever wonder what the people in these paintings looked like in person? I have, and this is part of the inspiration that led me to write Stealing Renoir. Next, an excerpt from the novel. And there it was, Portrait of Señorita Santangel, perhaps the most valuable Renoir ever painted. Elizabeth Monaghan grabbed the nearest chair and sprinted across the room, leaping over an ill-placed ottoman with gymnastic grace. She stepped onto the chair and pressed her cheek against the wall. She tilted the top of the frame forward and used her flashlight to illuminate the upper edges. There, in the upper left-hand corner and burned into the back of the wooden frame, an indelible mark that had proven impossible to obscure. The intertwined Yiddish characters Bess and Hi, which formed the Santangel coat of arms. Thank God for Baruch Hashem, she muttered. Elizabeth wasn't Jewish or particularly religious. She was well on her way to becoming the world's first billionaire art thief. Her elaborate con was in play, and some of the marks still thought they were partners. She'd planned for everything. Everything, that is, except aging parents and the return of her nemesis, Ben Abrams. Coming this fall, the second installation in the series, Stealing Picasso. Welcome to Mystery Island, where history and mystery meet with a murder to keep things interesting. Sheriff Andrew Tate spends his waking hours keeping the peace on an island too small for a traffic light and too big for a one-person police force. The wrong person is killed. A botched suicide heightens tension. And these ancestral ghosts won't leave him alone. I chose an island setting to narrow the focus of the storyline and plot. These letters are a major clue for solving the mystery. It doesn't get much press, but it was the largest gold rush in history and a big part of the inspiration for the novel. The Spanish looted 181 tons of gold from South America starting in 1492. Here's a brief excerpt from Mystery Island. Scott Delacroix was a night owl, someone it was safe to call after midnight. Scott closed his hand around the gold coin and squeezed until his fingers turned white. His posture turned combative. The mild-mannered, bookish historian disappeared, and the burning desire mixed with unabashed greed that explained the gold rush emerged. Those conquistadores were what you'd call equal opportunity pillagers, Scott said. The Incas, Aztecs, the whole of South America, basically. It funded the Spanish Empire. A couple pounds here, a couple pounds there. With gold, it adds up pretty quick. The Incas and Aztecs mined tons of it. Figure losing 100 pounds or so happened occasionally, especially since the Spaniards were moving it by wooden ship. Do not be alarmed. These ghosts are the ancestors of two of the characters in the story. What would our ancestors tell us if we could listen? This question is another part of the inspiration behind the novel, and two of the characters in Mystery Island have an opportunity to hear from the family ghosts of their past. This ancestral connection is another clue to help you solve the mystery of Mystery Island. Jewish pirates? Another big clue and a fascinating bit of history that doesn't get much press. This is a major plot point in Mystery Island. Gold. That's a quote from the ship's log from Christopher Columbus's maiden voyage. There's a lot more to this story. Crew members traded brass bells for gold, and it leads to another clue in the novel Mystery Island. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Teflon John, a character in Mystery Island who turned from a life of crime to go borderline legit, because selling used cars is a license to steal for guys like Teflon John, who figures capitalism means stealing within the law. Welcome to Let the Earth Breathe. My wife, Ann Milligan, and I converted our suburban yard into a botanical park using native plants. And you can too. Native plants are the black-thumbed gardener's friend. Like us, you can tune every window in your house to the Nature Channel. Here's how. That's Ann on the left. Our new house came with gravel and koi ponds. We had attended a one-day seminar on rain gardens, and it sounded like a great way to garden. That's the first time it rained. Clearly, this is a work in progress. Let the Earth Breathe is accessible. It's full of pictures and has some useful plant lists that you don't have to be a botanist to understand. This is the same place a few months later. That blue hose is an overflow from several rain barrels. We did not modify the soil. This is what it looks like now. Channeling rain from the roof pretty much takes care of all our watering needs. Using native plants means they are adapted to local conditions, and they're perennials that come back bigger and stronger every year. Now we're giving them away because they thrive and spread. This is the shady side of our house. Native ferns love shade. We removed about a dump truck full of gravel and filled in the hole where the koi pond was. Ferns are survivors that have been around for millions of years, and it is fascinating to watch them grow. This is the same spot a few years later. What a difference. These are maidenhair ferns. They make wonderful borders. It's mind-boggling how much rain comes off the roof. A 10-minute rain will fill up all of our rain gardens and all of our rain barrels. The water is absorbed within 2 or 3 days, so we don't have a problem with mosquitoes because their gestation period is 7 days. This is rain garden number 2. The water comes off the roof and goes down that rain gutter through a pipe under the path and empties into the rain garden. That's an indigo bush. And that's me before we learned that you don't have to rototill the soil to have a rain garden. Native plants are very adaptable. Here's a nice view of rain garden 2. That's that same indigo bush a few years later. Here's another view of rain garden 2. If we can do this, you can too, and Let the Earth Breathe will show you how. This shows the beginning of rain garden number 3. The water comes off the gutter on the left, and also the overflow from rain gardens 1 and 2. That's Anne taking a well-deserved break. This is what the garden looks like after a rain. All of that water will be absorbed into the ground within 2 or 3 days. Native vines are wonderful to garden with, and this is one of the things we cover in Let the Earth Breathe. Uh, Let the Earth Breathe is very accessible. It's meant to be hands-on. It's just a whole lot of fun, and it makes for a nice coffee table book. Coral honeysuckle, a native vine, is a hummingbird magnet. Welcome to A Promised Moon, a historical fiction love story. If you love page-turning historical fiction novels featuring strong female leads, then you'll love Stephen Alton Brown's story. A Promised Moon is the untold story of the Underground Railroad, where escapes were unaided and only the bravest, women and men, could steal themselves free. A research grant to explore the Underground Railroad in Kentucky led to some amazing discoveries and inspired me to write A Promised Moon. Here is an excerpt. "I love you, Joe," Rachel said. "Won't be happy without you. Can't be happy staying here. We got to go." She lifted their child from beside him. "I don't want our baby raised as slave. That ain't no life." "And if we get caught?" Joe asked. "Sold downriver and worked to death? That ain't no life neither." His coat was within reach, hung on a stick wedged into the gap between the unfinished logs of their shack, but his arms remained at his sides. "One step, Joe." Rachel wrapped the blanket around Samuel, fastened it into a simple sling to hold him. She reached for Joe's hand. "One step," she whispered. She held out her hand until her arm became tired. "Just one little step." Joe swallowed hard. "Can't move my feet." "One little step." She refused to lower her arm. He couldn't raise his head. "Give me your hand, Joe." "Sorry." He didn't look up. "I'm so sorry." "Won't give up on you," Rachel promised. "Not now, not never. But we got to go." Her shoulders strained with fatigue until the weight of her arm slowly pulled her outstretched hand to her side. His gaze remained on the floor. This is a copy of an escaped slave poster offering a $200 reward. Here's another escaped slave notice, again offering a $200 reward, not unusual. However, the average wage was $10 a month. So the reward was more than most people made in a year and a half. That's a lot of money. No way would an escaped slave risk asking for help while still in the South. It was illegal to aid an escaped slave. You could get a year in jail and a fine of $1,000. This was back when the average wage was $10 a month. The true story of the Underground Railroad is that most escaped slaves didn't get any help until they had crossed the Ohio River. At that point, they were already free. Their stories are those of remarkable bravery and resourcefulness and love. You can read the entire first chapter for free on my website. Meanwhile, here is another excerpt. "We're headed for freedom, child," Rachel whispered. "I promise we won't come back." She shivered and felt the devil nearby. The plantation house sat perched on a hill, same as a buzzard. She bent over and crept away from the shack to where a split rail fence disguised the contours of her shadow. The fence line stopped where the tobacco fields began. She turned sideways. Her profile remained hidden by the overlapping rail. Some folks claimed she had the top eye and could see into the future, but there wasn't any trick to seeing something before it happened. It was common sense and the uncommon patience to use it. Her grandma taught her how to look for the little things most people missed. The big house cook must still be asleep, else there'd be the smell of yeast in the air. It meant the white folk wouldn't be awake for hours. The sixth sense her grandma taught her was how she noticed what was nearby and figured out what it meant. The animals stabled in the barn couldn't see her. They'd keep quiet if she did. But no slave could walk across an open field at night without being guilty of something. And only acres of tobacco plants separated her and Samuel from a far distant stand of trees where the land was too rocky to plow. She ran like the dogs were already after her. Shadows of Chaco Canyon is a mystery about a mysterious people, the Anasazi. Here is an excerpt. A barrage of loud cracks and pops burst from the fire. Acrid smoke clouds filled the plaza. When the smoke cleared, the storyteller was revealed. The hooded black robe obscured his features, but couldn't disguise his imposing height. The storyteller was welcomed in every village. A trusted elder, the storyteller knew the history of every clan and wielded tremendous power. Sometimes it felt as if he had no ties to this world, but it was a sacred honor to wield such authority. It was a lonely life, a crooked path, but it was his calling. He spread his arms like an eagle taking flight, summoning the ancient spirits in a deep, melodious voice. The ceremonial fire in the inner plaza began shining like a supernova as twilight welcomed the first faint stars in the nighttime sky. A log toppled. Sparks swirled in the air like fireflies on a warm summer night. Between 850 AD and 1130 AD, the people of Chaco Canyon built remarkable structures of up to 650 rooms, carefully aligned on the earth to replicate the celestial sky above. And then they left it all behind. The buildings serve as solstice and equinox markers and remain astonishingly accurate to this day. The ancestors had settled this land in search of peace. Strategically, it had made perfect sense to move to a land no one else wanted to fight for. This was not to imply that the land was worthless, but that it was simply waiting for a people who were worthy. The land had a subtle, patient beauty, a spiritual quietness that welcomed those willing to adapt. The shaman had long, curly hair streaked with gray. Curly hair was unheard of among the people, but the shaman had been born with a full head of silken curls. It was believed that the spirits had chosen him to be a spiritual leader while in the womb. A few strands had escaped from the long braid hanging down his back and framed his rugged face in spiral tendrils. His prominent brows were arched above jet black eyes, and his face showed signs of strain. His efforts to intercede on the people's behalf were etched in the lines of his face and in the slight stoop of his shoulders. The spirits remained displeased. What else could explain such a severe drought? This is a plot point and a big part of the mystery in Shadows of Chaco Canyon. A remarkable solstice marker sits upon a shelf near the top of Fajada Butte. This remarkable marker animates the summer solstice and also animates the winter solstice in addition to the 18.6-year lunar cycle. I hope you've enjoyed this short presentation about Shadows of Chaco Canyon. You can read the first chapter for free at my website listed below. My books are available at singingrockpublishing.com and at amazon.com as well. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. You can go to my webpage for more information, where you can sign up for my monthly newsletter and not miss a thing.